So we'll wait a minute or two till the number of viewers comes through so we know we're not just talking to ourselves. Let's see. So I'll just comment here. Who do we have on the stream? Alec. So we've at least got one person. That's good. All right. I think we should be good to go. So welcome to SydneyAlt.net April. We've got Philip with us today, who is a long-time friend of SydneyAlt.net, used to present on IL and all sorts of interesting things when we met up in the physical plane. And today we're going rather higher to the AI level and refactoring code. So Philip's going to show us three different AI, different AI GPT equivalents to do the refactoring, to compare. And also, I think he's welcoming your own code samples too. Is that right, Phil?
Yep. So just to prove that there's none of this, the only thing I got prepared is my notes, but everything else you want to throw at me, I'm open to it, because I want everybody to learn the kind of stuff that comes out of these GPTs and these LLMs. And it's going to help everybody understand what you can and cannot do and kind of dispel a lot of the myths that you might hear over the media.
That sounds good. So for the code samples, probably use a gist. Might be easier to copy, and if it's any significant length, I mean, if it's just tiny, you could put in the comment, but yeah, probably do a gist and post into the comments with that. But a bit later in the piece. So as usual, we have the prize giveaways of 2 JetBrains licenses. So I will try and think of questions as we go. So that might be a bit tricky if it's all live code, but I'll do my best to give us something to ask at the end to give away the licenses without it being gambling, which is, of course, the danger if you give things away without asking a question, which we don't want to. We don't want to be in front of the police. So we'll make up questions. Now we also got Francis here at the bottom, living in his mansion, his grand piano behind him, and all the rest.
No, I think I have to put this background, and I don't think you want to see what the real ugliness behind the virtual screen.
So, anything you want to announce, Francis, or anything for the group, or?
Yeah, I suppose my just got a new job. I'm working for a company called Tilliter. They kind of do. If you go into Woolies, they if you go to the fresh produce section, you may have already come across this kind of AI kind of scales where there's a camera, there's a kind of TV unit, and try and guess what you put on the scale. So next time you're in Woolies, check it out, and shoot me any feedback, whether it's good or bad.
If it doesn't work, tell Francis. we should get some free stuff from Woolworths if we're talking about this, Francis. Just give us a free orange or something.
Along with your JetBrains license, we'll give you a packet of apples.
Sounds pretty good. Not just for the kids, right? You have it for the developers as well when you go to Woolworths.
Who says no to a packet of apples?
All right, so maybe go on to the talk now. So you ready to take over, Philip?
Oh yeah, sure. Let's do this.
So I'll share your switch us over to the view with the screen here. So I'll put Philip on the top. There we go, and I'll put me on the bottom. Francis can be more important. There we go. He's got a better background anyway. Here we go. All right. So take it away, Philip.
Cool. Thanks, guys. Well, welcome, guys. If you know me, as I said, I've been around a while, and today I'm going to do a brain dump of the stuff that I've learned with working with various GPTs and LLMs, and some of the useful stuff and some of the limitations that come with using this tech. Now, I understand that this has only been around for most people for like a year, probably less than that for if you're just coming on. So today I'm going to talk really about how do you actually use an LLM, at least the online ones. So I'm not going to go for the offline ones because there are versions that you could run on your local machine, but I want to keep it to the more popular one. So today I'm going to be talking roughly about Gemini, that's one. I'm also going to be talking Gemini Advanced and Gemini to a lesser extent. I'm also going to be talking about ChatGPT, and I'm also going to be talking about the Grock, which has multiple models and is quite fast, but they do have their own limitations as well. So later on at the end of the talk, I'll post a link to these notes. Actually, I'll post a link here in the chat so you can see it. If I get it onto the right screen. Anyway, I'll post it later. There we go. So these are all the notes. So I'm not going to read most of them if you want to browse through them, but roughly I'll go over the highlights and I'll start taking code samples that we could refactor with. Okay, so one of the things that working with a GPT, if you're not familiar with it, is an interesting mix. It's almost like having a all-knowing AI with a memory of a goldfish. Effectively, you could ask it any question, and the problem that you'll run into is that sometimes it's so confident in its answers that unless you actually know the subject matter, it's indistinguishable from actually. You still have to fact check it. At the same time, if the conversation goes on long enough, and that tends to happen with ChatGPT and Gemini, for example, I have conversations that go on for months with various AIs, but the problem is that the context window or their memory is so short that if I mention something and their memory only lasts about, say, a week, and so I said something that is equivalent to about 2 or 3 weeks worth of stuff, they completely forget it, and it's almost like you have to start all over.
Phil, you meaning in terms of the time that's passed or the amount of conversation that's kind of passed?
The amount of conversation. So, for example, if and this is important when you're working with code, because you might be pasting like the same class over and over and over again. You could ask it, hey, I've got this big class that might be 1,000 lines long. I want you to refactor it. Of course, when it gives you the refactored version, you have to actually look at it. And then the thing that makes it worse is the refactored version that it gives you also takes up the context window. So the whole conversation is kind of bounded within this very, very small, almost like MS-DOS-y kind of size, because you effectively you're bounded to probably like 100K of text if you're lucky. So that's one thing to consider. The other thing that we have to consider as well is really around the precision and detail. The problem with LLMs is everybody knows, or at least it's very well known, that they do hallucinate. That's one. GPT 3.5 did it more. GPT 4 and above does it less, but they still do it. The other thing that happens with GPTs is that they're lazy. So if you ask it to repost the new version of any kind of code that you might have, what it will effectively do is say everything same here, same here, same here. Okay, here's what's changed. This is what's changed. So you actually have to prompt it to the point where you have to say, please give me the whole damn file. And sometimes it takes you literally, and it goes down the wrong path, and that's why you have to correct it. So, and we'll see that. So what I'll do today is I do have a code sample in an IDE that I just had to come up with. I'll go a couple rounds with the different LLMs just to see how it would refactor it. And then we could actually like iterate on it and see how we go. Other interesting uses for LLMs that I've personally used myself. They're great at understanding large blocks of code. So typically what I've done in the past is I pasted this large class, and it can tell me what the design features are for what that particular class. I could have it summarize it, and I could also have it generate commit messages, because if I paste two different versions of the same class, it'll be, and you ask it, right, can you tell me what's changed between these two classes and give me a summary? and then convert it into Markdown format, that effectively becomes your commit message. It could become your documentation. The other thing to consider is also with incremental prompts. So as developers, we're all familiar with the concept of streaming, streaming data when you have got a very small window. And the same concept actually applies to LLMs. And the reason why that applies is because since you have a very, very tight window, you effectively have to have it summarize itself so that the ideas that it keeps coming up with are evolving as the stream or as that window keeps sliding. So the prompts themselves, while that's the way you can work around it, because what you actually have to do is say, I've got this block of code, I want you to change it. It comes back to you and says, hey, I've got this is what I think it is. And then you got to go back and forth because it never gets it right. But the important thing there is, as we will see, it gives you a pretty good idea of where you need to go. And I think the most value that I've gotten out of LLMs is not that it answered the question entirely for me, but it completely cuts away all the options that I probably would have sat around and said, maybe I should do this, maybe I should do that. So it's good because it gives you prototypes right away. Like it'll say, well, here's how I think it is. And most of the time, if you follow up with something, well, what do the tests look like? It'll even generate the XUnit test for you, or NUnit or MS test or whatever you decide to do. So it's good because it gives you the prototypes you need, but it's not necessarily complete in the sense it'll give you the entire solution. Yeah, that's the difference. It's I've heard all this stuff online about are LLMs going to replace programmers? No, the answer is no, and here's why. One of the things that is not really mentioned, but everybody should know, is that these LLMs, whether it's Gemini or any version of Gemini, ChatGPT, or Grock, they're not connected to an IDE. They're not. They still rely on a human to actually take the code, which is what we'll do, paste it into, well, in my case, it's JetBrains Writer or VS Code, run it, and then tell it, well, that didn't work. So there's still that really jagged cycle between it says that it'll work, you have to try it, and then you tell it, well, it didn't quite work as I expected. There's also this concept with LLMs around zero shot, where some LLMs are good enough that they get the answer right on the first try, which is quite rare, but it's getting better as the GPT-4 came out versus GPT 3.5. But for the most part, there are techniques that we'll get into that talk about what you can do to take something like an LLM that's got a few problems and then ask it questions like, look at your answer. Does that look right? If it doesn't look right, tell me what your reasoning is, and let's refine that. So in that sense, it's really, really different from any other tool that I've worked with before, because it's almost like having a sidekick that has great ideas, has a pool of knowledge that is vast. But if you can know how to work around those limitations, and that's where things get interesting. So that's the gist of it. I mean, that's it in a nutshell. I'm not going to waste. I didn't have any slides to go over this, though, but I think there's a lot to discuss here, because there's a lot of good things you could do with this if you know how to use it correctly. Now, for some of you that are already familiar with GitHub Copilot and things like that, you're probably asking why I'm not using it, and the answer is, well, I just don't have access. I'm broke. I'm just gonna be honest. I don't have access to it, but I do have access to the more popular ones. So you could actually just take something like ChatGPT and Gemini and see how you go with it. At the same time, you can try Grock, which is also free, and it'll tell you. Supposedly it's uncensored, but I haven't actually tried that yet. So if you want to do something illegal, I can help you, but knock yourself out on your own time. Okay, so But before I go on, does anybody have any questions? James, you want to?
Yeah, nothing just yet, but I want to concur on like the context window idea, right? I've had GPT make me some nice classes and things, and then you tell it to refine something in it, and it refines that thing, and then you tell it to fix something else up, and it forgets the first thing you told it to do and reverts to its like default wrong state for the first thing and fixes the next thing. And then you tell it to do something else. And once you get into a certain loop, you're like, all right, I'll just do the rest myself. It's given me a great start and it's saved me some time, but I've reached the point of where I'm not getting value from talking to it anymore. So
Yeah.
maybe Phil's got some tricks to get around that sort of thing as well.
Yeah, there's also limitations that one huge limitation that I would call out is that it's not great at planning. There's no concept of kind of they do have agent-based AIs that try to break a large problem down and then assign a particular responsibility to another GPT, and then there's a separate thread that does that. But I have yet to see a GPT that can break a problem into different segments and be able to keep track of it as if it were a huge project on its own. Like I would love to be able to have a virtual dev team where I've got a GPT acting as a product manager. I've got one as like the engineering manager. I've got one as the architect. I've got one as the developer with different approaches, and they're all checking each other. But that's just not where we are yet. I would say we're probably about a year out before, say, Gemini 1.5 comes out with the larger context window, which supposedly does crazy things like you could fit the entirety of an entire JS library in it. And like, for example, React, you could have it take the entire library of the React JS and then say, give me examples on how to do this. And it understands it. And the samples are actually better than the ones that you get on the site. So we're not quite there yet, but we're pretty close. That being said,
yeah, the workspace might be worth mentioning. I haven't tested it out though. I'll stick the link in, but oops, it's got like some terrible link.
But the interesting part is there's also a demo that I'll do here called Ask the Code, which is a plugin to ChatGPT that takes any Git repo, and as long as you give it access to GitHub, it can go through an entire repo and actually understand it. Like, you could ask it questions. But what I'm not so sure about is how much of that context window it actually takes up. Because if your repo is at least a couple hundred megabytes, this thing is not going to be able to understand it all. Like, what we really need to have is a context window large enough in the gigabytes so that you could have these individual agents to go over different things at once. But we're not there yet. I would say give it a year or two, maybe, but we're just not there. Now, that being said, shall we continue?
Yeah, go for it, Phil.
Absolutely.
Okay. So do we have any paste bins we want to start with, or I'll just start with like?
I think go with your one, Phil, and then let's see whether anyone wants to stick in there or after that.
Okay. So what I did is for a different coding demo that I did, I actually had it create a dummy class here with a sample set of tests here. So it doesn't really matter what it actually does. It's not that interesting. Unfortunately, this is not as ugly as it could be. So, but I'll give you an idea of what it is, and then we can work from there. And to prove to you that I did not prepare this in any sense, what I'm going to do is I'll show you this class, and then next I'll go to a prompt with GPT, ask it to give me the ugliest piece of shit C# code you could think of, and let's refactor that. So this one is basically is your classic order processor that has a dependency on a SQL Server client. And it looks like it's searching for a command. I could do this myself.
Boolean logic's a bit sad as well down the bottom.
It is a bit sad down the bottom. And this is like, I'll be clear. This is an easy one. This is super easy to fix. But what I want to do is I actually want to see what a GPT actually does with this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to paste this, and I'll cut over to say, okay, does anybody have any preference? Should I start with Gemini or ChatGPT, or let's start with ChatGPT because everybody knows ChatGPT.
It's the classic.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
So okay, so what I do is I just literally say refactor this, and I could even we could even do a comparison. Okay, so it's suggesting DI. It's already broken it out into classes, which is okay. Not how I would have done it. It might be interesting to see how I would do it versus how Chat GPT would do it versus how it would actually. So this is how Chat GPT does it. Well, if we look at this, it's actually not bad at all.
Can people read it?
Can people read this? Should I zoom in?
That's probably
better?
better, I think.
Okay, so from what I could see, it's done an interface extraction, which makes sense. It doesn't necessarily it took out the SQL dependency, which is okay. It did centralize or extract the method into one place, which is good. And then roughly the order processor itself is clean, right? So it's, as you can tell, it's not bad. The only problem that you're going to run into in this case is I got to take this and then paste it all the way back and then see if it actually still works. The other problem that you're going to run into is that it gives you a rough idea, but it doesn't really care about integration anymore. Because I got to take this. If I took it for what it was, like if I copy the whole thing and go back here, yes, I could just effectively, wait a second. It breaks a whole lot of stuff here. So it gives you an idea, like the problem that I have with this, and this is what I struggle with GPTs is, yes, I could probably ask it to say, well, now it breaks this. How do I fix it? The question is how far down the rabbit hole you want to go. But let's do it just for the shits and giggles. Okay. So what's interesting if you never worked with GPTs before is that yes, it gets the context. Okay, in this case, it's suggesting using mock. Let's see the code that it actually produces. This is okay-ish, but on the surface, it looks okay. That's the problem with this one. The problem that I always have with GPTs themselves is the code looks okay until I actually paste it back. So
yeah, it will always look okay. You just have to look very carefully to find where it's not okay.
Yes. So what I would do, and when you're working with this one, is I'll go through the cycle of just one case of refactoring. So for example, I'll just comment this one out and then paste this one in. And then the other thing I will also do is I'll add a dependency to mock. Hopefully the one that doesn't add his own nagware. Everybody hates that. Okay, so that should install it. There we go. And let's see, it does not work. Oh, that's because I pasted it wrong. That's fine, I can fix that. So I don't care so much about the test outcome because in this case, it's not really going to work anyway. I don't have a database. But on the surface, you could tell that it looks like it works. It will compile. That's the amazing thing. Does anybody want to see what it does with Gemini or Grock? I think that's the more interesting thing because every single GPT does it differently. Also with Grock, it's got different models, which makes it even more interesting. So if I backed out of this one and just went with the original test, and then I actually just do this. Actually, I had this public. If I go over to say, well, the nice thing about this one is if I could just take the same prompt that I have at the top. And I'll explain a few more things with ChatGPT that I added that are a little bit different. Because one of the nicer things that I did with ChatGPT is that there is ChatGPT, unlike Grock, unlike Gemini, allows you to add custom instructions. And that's one of the selling points of ChatGPT because you could customize it to your style and your preferences. But the interesting part is that when you customize it to your style, you could do things to have it respond with shorter responses. So, for example, I hate it when, like, for me personally, I hated it when ChatGPT always said, my cutoff period is 2023, or I ask it a general question and say, well, I'm not a doctor or I'm not this. Here's what I know for legal reasons. And I think that's just to protect OpenAI. I said, I literally put in instructions that basically say, I know you're an AI, so please don't say you're an AI. Get straight to the point. If you don't know, just say you don't know. Unfortunately, that doesn't exist.
Do you mean in your prompt, Phil, or like in some configuration?
There is a setting there that I'll get to in a sec. That I have like 10 different rules that basically say, here's the instructions that I want you to follow. Now, the interesting thing is you could actually ask it to write in a certain style. For me, I like Ernest Hemingway style, where it just tells me, here's the problem, here's where you're wrong, or here's where it makes a lot of sense, because it actually saves on that context window. So that's where it's really useful. Mm-hmm. If I did the same thing in Gemini, I would actually have to paste the same set of instructions over and over again, and it actually takes up the context window, and it takes up a lot of time. So that's one thing you have to consider as well. Now, let's see what happens when I actually paste this into Gemini. So this is the same initial prompt, but watch, because it's going to be completely different. It's going to be similar.
Just tell everyone which version of Gemini it is, this one.
Oh, sorry. This is Gemini Advanced. This is not the free version. So there's Gemini. Actually, we can compare Gemini Advanced and Gemini. Gemini Advanced is quite good. Interestingly enough, it suggested something very similar, but it suggested, actually, it's pretty close. Oh, wow. So it's still doing get stock count.
Can you make it a bit bigger there, Phil? Thanks. And we've lost your sound, Phil.
Oh, that's because I touched the mute button. Right.
Oh, good now. Sorry, we lost like the last 15 seconds.
No, it's okay. What I was saying was that it's almost identical. I think the only part that's really different here is how it named what it extracted. But the actual operations are very similar, because if I look at how it actually did it in the output here, you could see that it, instead of using a repository, called it an inventory database. This one called it a repository, but effectively the code is roughly the same. So it's, in some ways, it's pretty. They're both okay. I'm more interested in what happens if I give it to Gemini vanilla. What
So
happens if I?
we got Andrews just asked, can you try it in aistudio.google.com? Have you got that one?
Yeah, I can try that. I haven't actually tried that yet. Okay. Yes. Blah blah blah. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll paste exactly. Oh, sorry, I'll paste exactly the same prompt. Now, I'm not familiar with AI Studio. Which version of Gemini does it run? Does anybody know?
Got 1.5 Pro, says Andrew.
Holy crap! Oh, this one's even better.
My kids are on the stream probably, so only child-friendly language.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, no, I mean really, they probably are.
Holy. Anyway.
That's fine.
No, it's good. It's good because this is interesting, because if this is 1.5, I was actually wondering how to actually access this, but it's good because if this is 1.5, then that means that this is the version of Google AI that has the ridiculously large 1 million token limit, which I haven't played with yet. So thank you, Andrew, for that. So as you can see, it's really interesting because, well, it's the same AI, but this one, yeah, it's, let me zoom in. Yeah, as you can see, it's well, this one's even better. I think the only thing it didn't do.
Sarah's asking if you can zoom in a bit there.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Okay, so it's just interesting because the only thing it really didn't do is create the concrete class that implements the inventory repository, unlike the other two examples. But it did do some really interesting stuff around like optimizing it. I could say, as a follow-up, just for the sake of discussion.
Do you want to paste it in? Actually, it's a bit hard to see in the browser window.
Yeah, I'll paste it in.
These portals are not designed for presenters very well.
Yeah, I just
use code with caution, it says. All right.
Yeah, this is not great.
Sorry, I mean, if you put it in VS Code, then we can see the whole thing.
Okay, so this is what it pasted. So it's a bit weird because it added the interface, but it didn't actually add the implementation. So the trick here
Weird.
is when it skips it. So this is what I was talking about. There's times where it omits something, and you have to remind it. Where I literally just say, "But wait." And it says "oopsie," and then it gives you the implementation. So as you can see, as I was saying before, the LLMs never get it right the first time, but usually with a little bit of prompting where you're like, "Oh, you missed a spot," it gets it right. But it's still a bit janky because even with me just going back and forth between windows and then pasting it with a VS Code or Rider, it does take a little bit of work, which is why it's really better for not whole solutions, but just giving you a rough prototype of where to start. It's also good in cases where you've been staring at the same bit of code for like an hour or two, and you're like, "What's broken about this?" And then an hour later, you're like, "Well, you pasted into uh, the AI and said, well, what's changed between these two?" And it's usually good at spotting that.
Hmm.
So that's the important thing there. There's also Grock, which is the free version. Now, Grock is a little bit different because Grock has multiple models. Grock has this drop down here with, I think where it says 8192 at the end of it, that's the context window size. So that is tiny. Like it'll actually, the other thing I noticed just the other day is if it goes past the context window, it'll actually tell you. So let's try, say, let's do Mistral. No, let's try the 8192. Llama 8B. The one thing you're going to notice here is that this thing is bloody fast. Like, literally, like, this is how fast it's going. The results are instantaneous compared to, say, ChatGPT and Gemini. They're much quicker.
Can you
At the
make
same
it
time,
bigger again, Phil?
Sorry about that. So as you can see, the output is roughly the same to what the other two models output. So as you can see, the suggestions across these different GPTs are pretty consistent, at least for this case of refactoring, because I like to think it's fairly straightforward, but it's interesting that they roughly come up with the same output. I wouldn't necessarily do it like this, but it's interesting. It's interesting. I could try this again with, say, Gemma. Actually, let me try that again.
Andrew's asking, what were the model choices that we had?
So I'll zoom in. Oh, that's right. There's still a bit of lag, but with the drop down, I've got Gemma 7B, Llama 2. There are two versions of Llama 3. Now, you can see, if you can't see the name there, there's a drop down here where it says Gemma. It's not showing up. Or maybe that's just a lag. So there's a drop down next to the cog icon there, or settings, or whatever you want to call it. There's Gemma 7B. There's Llama 3. And when it says 7B, it's 7 billion parameters. So there's Llama 2 and Llama 3. There's two variations of Llama 3, which is the latest. I believe that's the latest open source LLM model from Facebook, I believe. I could be wrong.
Yeah.
And then there's this Llama 370B, which is like 70 billion parameters. That's the one where you ask it a lot of questions and it's got broader coverage. and Llama 3 8V is the one where it has a smaller, fewer number of parameters, but it might be a bit quicker, from what I understand. There's also the Mistral one, which has a wider context window, so you could also try that. As you can see, the outputs between these models are pretty close. But there are, I haven't gotten to it yet, but there's different benchmarks. And they've tried giving them logic questions. Some of them get the logic questions right, some of them get them wrong. It really depends on their training data. Like sometimes I've asked them very obscure questions about IL, and sometimes they get it right, sometimes they get it wrong. But usually, if it's a more popular subject, or if it's something along the lines of coding with C#, it's a bit easier for them. But as I said, they don't always get it right. But it's really interesting because you could use something like Grock, which is absolutely free right now, and the number one selling point for Grock, aside from the fact that it's free, is the fact that it does this at a very fast speed. So, for example, even Llama 3 with 70 billion parameters, it clocks it. It's still pretty fast. It still gives you the same output. But the interesting part is, unlike Gemini Pro 1.5, it was able to give you this right out of the gate. So it's as you can see, it really depends on the model that you have. It also depends on the prompting that you give it. The one thing that stood out for me when I first started using these models is that, yes, they never get this. It's very rare they get it right the first time. But you can ask them to do things that would take you hours to do. Like I could say, well, what is the modified test? Can you give me the modified test for this case to cover both the happy and not so happy path? In fact, I'll do that now.
I feel a couple of questions. So, is there an API for Grock?
As far as I know, no, but I could be wrong. There's an API for ChatGPT, but I never played around with it yet. In fact, that's a good question.
And Raymond was just wondering about the 307 T per second. What's the T?
Tokens.
Okay, yep.
So you might have noticed that when I asked Gemini or ChatGPT something, it would sit there and it would take like 10. It's very slow. But with Grock, there's a term that they use for models called quantizing, which is basically shrinking a model so that it could run on less CPU power. Allegedly, Apple has a quantized model of their own LLM that could run on a phone, and that's the idea behind trying to shrink it so that everybody could have their own personal LLM. As I alluded to earlier, there are LLMs that you could run locally. If you have an RTX card like me, aside from the noise cancellation that you can do with RTX, there's a tool called Chat with RTX that allows you to run an LLM locally on your desktop machine, and it runs using your graphics card and the GPUs that run on it. So it's really interesting because NVIDIA is really taking something that you normally would probably use for gaming, and now you can actually use it for things like your LLMs. So it's really fascinating stuff. That being said, I think the more practical use for these things is something that that you could actually use, that is called ask the code. So if I go to ChatGPT and I go to explore GPTs, you can do something like ask. Now ask the code, and it's interesting. So these GPTs, obviously, they've got their special variations in this. I've got two interesting ones that I do for fun. I've got one that creates mid-journey prompts every time I wanted to create specific types of art, and it does all the work for me. So I just copied and pasted it into Discord. There's also things like negotiation GPTs, where if you are trying to negotiate something in the real world and you're not sure about how to approach it, it actually gives you strategies on what would you get you the best outcomes based on the parameters that you say. Like in my case, if I wanted to get, I would negotiate a higher salary or something like that, or I've got a gig that I want to think about and I want to negotiate terms, that's actually a good way to do it. Okay. So what I'll do is can somebody give me a GitHub URL just to have a look at? Any GitHub, it just has to be public.
All right, I'm watching the chat. Here we go. We've got KSP. All right.
Okay. So let me have a look at KSP. So
All right, that one looks like a pretty hard one.
So don't ask me how it works because I don't know how it works. I'm just literally oh, Kerbal. So I think my guess is that this tool really doesn't really go into every single class, because it just doesn't. Like my hypothesis here is that it doesn't necessarily go into the design of everything. But if I wanted to just drill into it and say, well, is there?
Phil, we lost your sound again.
That's okay. I just stopped talking.
I thought you were talking. Sorry.
No. That's it. It's fine. Look. It's just I'm just asking a general question because I'm embarrassed because I haven't played Kerbal yet. But okay, that. So it's the challenge I always have is that when I read it, it sounds legit. But if I didn't really know enough about the mod itself, I would have to actually check it myself.
Yeah, you maybe need to do one on a repo you know well to see whether it's giving you a good response.
Right. Let me just do mine. I'll do a simple one. So I have this one. I have this old repo. Okay. Which is a generic. So I wrote this about 15 years ago, which is a generic set of extensions over LINQ that does fuzzy weighted searches. So, okay. So this one's not particularly interesting in itself if you use it. So this looks correct, but also keep in mind that the repo itself is quite small. So the one thing that is notable about this particular repository, if I drag this in, it only is like a few files. So I wrote this like 14, 15 years ago, but the actual files themselves are quite small, right? This could fit within the context window of of any good size LLM. So it might not be a good example, but it is a example where if an LLM has enough context window space, it can understand what's going on there. Now, from what I can tell itself, because since I wrote this, it's correct. And if I ask, okay, so and I could check it since I wrote it. The other term that they have for these plugins is they call it RAG, or retrieval augmented generation, if I got the term correctly.
Yeah, right.
But
sorry, go ahead.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah, getting to upgrade to the latest version of .NET, Idiomatic or something like that might be cool. When did you last update it?
Never. The thing is, it's so generic that you could still use it today, and it works just fine. So, okay, it starts with the basic stuff. I think I can't remember, but I set this to .NET Standard 2. It's been a while, so it'll run on. It has been a while, so I haven't even done it on .NET 5 or anything more recent. So nullable reference types, things like that. Okay, yeah, I get it. So that makes sense. So sorry, I've got a rogue child process. So if she wanders around, just don't mind her.
Daddy.
Yes.
Daddy.
Come on, go. So the interesting part about this is that yes, it go to mama. Come on.
I'm in the office.
Yeah. Anyway, so I've got a different rogue child process that I've got to worry about. But anyway, so with just give me a sec. So the interesting thing about updating this one that I could see. Oh, I love it. Right. So where was I? So if I modernize, so there we go. Okay. Now I'm at full bandwidth. Right. So interestingly enough, to answer your question, the stuff that it does suggest, okay, I can drill into it. Okay. Give me examples with beef.
Yeah, again, it's if you break it down to little bits, it can probably do it, but it's giving you this overall kind of motherhood version of what you do to upgrade rather than, do this, do that exact code change.
Okay, so it's good. So here's what it looks like before. Let's see what it does after. Okay, it's not that different. Does everybody see this? Because, okay, so it's got this. And all it's really doing, oh, well, that makes sense. But this is a bit idiomatic, but it doesn't really get you that much, right? Okay. Enabling null reference types. I'm not a fan, but yes, I guess you could do that. Like, I wouldn't do it this way. Generally speaking, my style would be I'd probably give it a dummy delegate. Records for immutable data, debatable, but yes, this actually makes sense. So you've got before, and you've got this. Oh, actually, that does look better. Another example, local functions. This is what it looked like before. Wait, that doesn't make sense. Huh? This, am I reading this wrong? Isn't this already a local function? So here's a classic example where it does something that's really off. Wait. So this is how you correct it. Literally,
Wow, it appreciates your attention to detail. It's pretty good.
I don't necessarily agree with this idiomatic style. But as you could see, when you work with these LLMs, the whole point of this is that unlike any other tool you've had before, when you correct it, you just say, wait a second, that doesn't look right. Shouldn't it be this? And then all of a sudden it'll say, okay, sorry, I skipped that. So the important thing to get out of these LLMs, as you can see, when you're working with like this kind of refactoring and going back and forth, is that unlike the other tools that you might have used, like for me, well, I've never used a tool where I could literally use natural language to say, wait, that doesn't look right. Shouldn't it be this? And then it'll actually correct itself. So it's really interesting in that sense. And at the same time, it's very useful because there's times where you can ask it questions like this one. So, for example, why did you opt to use a static? So it's really interesting because not only does it give you suggestions, but if you drill into it and you say, right, so why did you do that? Explain your reasoning behind it. It'll actually give you a detailed answer. This one, I'm not sure about. Number 2. Encapsulation, yeah. Okay, functional principles. Now, here's the part that's really, really interesting. Because you could drill into it and you could actually ask it questions like, so it'll drill into it and it'll explain it to you. And you can challenge it. So the important thing to get out of with working with these LLMs is that, yes, it's not like any other tool that you would work with before. It's not smart in the sense that you would treat it like a person, but you can challenge it. And with a few prompts, you can get to what you actually needed to do. I know we're getting close to time, but as you can see, there's a few things that you can do that you could step through that allow you to do some really useful stuff with it. Personally, for me, I've used LLMs to take projects that I've had sitting for 10 years right in a notebook, and I said, right, I've had this idea sitting there for a while. Fill in the gaps for me, and how do I flesh it out? And it's able to do that. At the same time, with C# code, depending on how it, again, this is why there's such a thing as called prompt engineering. I'm not sure if it's really a thing but as you can see, with the right set of prompts and with the right set of follow-up questions, you're effectively taking a half-baked solution that they give you the first shot, and then you're shaving it down to something that you could actually use. So hopefully this is useful, because this is the kind of stuff you could build with it. I'm sure there's going to be better versions of these LLMs, like, for example, what Andrew pointed out with Pro 1.5, where they can effectively do things with a context window. Like, for me, hypothetically, you can narrate the story of your entire life in that context window and ask it to write a book on your life. And it will be able to do it. So it's good. It's good. So that's I think that's pretty much covers everything. Hopefully that was useful, because there's a lot of interesting stuff you can do with this, though. But if you come up with something that I haven't mentioned here and it's really cool, please share it, because I'd love to hear it. So, any questions?
All right, I'm watching the chat, so pop in questions for Phil.
I've actually got a question. Have you used Devin yet? Have you had a chance to play around with
I
Devin?
have not.
Okay.
That's one of the things I haven't gotten to yet. I've heard things about it, but I haven't really played around with it yet.
Might have to get you back for the next segment of this segue to this talk.
It's interesting, because I'm doing a separate talk for Eco Experts on Thursday on Legacy Code and .NET. So I'm happy to redo that talk. I could also do some really low level interesting stuff, which might not necessarily have any practical use, but it's just really cool to be able to say, hey, here's what I've been playing around with, and hopefully it's useful, and then hopefully it doesn't break stuff.
I mean, we can get the audience to perhaps, have their say in what they'd like to hear. Now's a chance to speak up.
No, it's fine. It's cool. I mean, I miss being able to do these kinds of presentations, because I haven't really gotten back on the conference circuit yet, but it's a lot of fun doing this, because it's just talking about random stuff and just presenting all the things that I've run into when I've been working with like LLMs or coding in general. So it's always good to be back talking about just things I love to do. So thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah, last question for you, Phil. Which one, if you're just going to use one, which is your current favorite, really?
Gemini. I've got a thing.
The Pro one.
Gemini Pro, although ChatGPT, actually, let me show you what I've got with ChatGPT. So
that's
there's
the
settings.
we got there. Yep.
So personalization, they've got this thing called memory, but they've got also personalization and then custom instructions. Like custom instructions, what would you like ChatGPT to know about you to provide better responses? Like I literally said, this is what my name is. I'm over this age. This is this is how I grew up.
Wow, you gave it a lot of information.
I gave it a lot of information, and then there's also I got custom instructions, but where is it? Okay, here. So there was another tab. I can't find it anymore. But basically, what it said is, cut the bullshit. Every time I ask a question, follow it up with 3 suggested questions that I should ask that allow me to delve deeper into the topic. And then for fun, I actually said, add a bit of sarcasm and irony and tone to your text, as if you know you're an AI, but you're not actually outwardly saying that you are, and write in the style. So it's interesting that way. Because I remember when it first came out with when they first came out with ChatGPT, one of the most annoying things that it used to do is say, my cutoff point was September of 2020 something. And I was like, please don't waste the context window on telling me what your cutoff period is. Just pretend I've listened to it 1,000 times and I don't want to hear it anymore. And it just doesn't mention it anymore. So things like that makes a difference. And at the same time, I've done some pretty, let's just say, really interesting prompts with it. Like asking about conspiracy theories and things like that, and say, okay, pretend well, we're on a family thing, but let's just say that if I wanted to have it write Harry Potter as if written by Stephen King, it would actually do it.
The more horrible version.
Oh, yeah, it's a very horrible version, but there's some really creative stuff that you can do with it if you spend the time with it. Again, this is really playing on the whole thing with LLMs, because they can do all this amazing stuff with very little effort. And I mean, it would take me, for example, doing things like Google reviews, where I put out bullet points and I say, I just want to say this, and this, just condense it into something that sounds reasonable. It'll actually rewrite it. So, and it does that with various things. So there's a lot of really interesting uses you can use for it. Like I use it for blogging, especially when I've got a lot of stuff that I just kind of want to throw out and I want to organize. But at the same time, I try to balance it out, where if it says something a bit fluffy, I'm like, no, man, I don't talk like that. Talk like a person. You get to the point, and it doesn't. So it's really useful, because there's all these times where it would have been very difficult for me to do it by hand. Or for example, for my wife, when she was applying to different jobs, I was doing things like copying the description of the job, copying the text of her CV, and saying, right, so here's what the job looks like. Here's what her CV looks like. Write the cover letter, write a CV that would match that, just using the contents of her CV, and I just send it off.
It does sound like a perfect use.
So there's a lot of really useful stuff that if you just had to, write it yourself, or you're one of these people on LinkedIn that actually paid somebody like a professional resume writer, I think you don't need to do that anymore. So again, there's some really interesting uses, and it's really up to your imagination what you do. That being said, there are limitations, but if you work around those limitations, then sky's the limit, right?
Yeah, Andrew's got, yes, we need a bigger output window, not just a big context window. Otherwise, your resume might get a bit short. Yes,
and hopefully they get to gigabyte context windows and fast enough LLMs to manage that, or whatever succeeds LLMs. But this is the world we live in for now. Hopefully that gets better within, say, a year or so. But I think even with what we got, it's still leaps and bounds above anything we've got. I mean, I'm sure if you use something like Copilot, it works automagically even on just running on GPT 3.5. But even then, it does have its limitations.
All right, we're coming to time, really. So, yes, a big thank you to Phil. It's been quite a nice and interesting session, and also I think you've kept it nice and interactive as well, Phil, which is tricky to do with an online thing, but I think it worked really well. So, thank you also to our audience for participating and asking good questions and all the rest. And I have two questions for you. It was hard to make up questions on today's talk, but the first one is, are you ready? All right, first answer gets the first JetBrain license. So which of the LLMs or GPTs that Phil showed today is free and the fastest. Steve, the one I was looking for was Grock. I mean, it was, I think the one you showed, was it Llama inside of Grock that you showed? Or
Oh, that's it. That I was about to say it's a trick question.
yeah,
But generally speaking, it is Grock running any one of those models. Like you're not going to get the speed that you'll get out of Grock in Gemini or Gemini Advanced or ChatGPT. You might get, it's not even close.
so it's because it's the Grock infrastructure that's so fast for Llama rather than the Llama model itself being particularly fast.
Yes.
Yes. All right. So I think we'll go with Steve's Grock answer. So Steve, send me your email address in a meetup message, and I'll send you through the license. And congratulations on the first question. And then for the second question, so this one is, what's the biggest hurdle or technical limitation with the current LLMs? It's kind of somewhat open to interpretation, so give it your best answer.
They cannot tell me how to keep my daughter out of my office.
That was a BBC moment, Phil. I was expecting some sort of.
I think it gives you pretty good advice on like general topics like that. If you want a general topic about parenting, it'll do a reasonable job.
Oh yeah.
I mean, from my perspective as a parent, it seems reasonable. Assuming yes.
One interesting use that I've done is I've got, you know, those Asian restaurants that have like the soup places that it's kind of like DIY. You get your own ingredients together and then you stick it in a bowl and then they make soup out of it.
Oh yeah.
I took a picture of their entire that entire rack, sent it over to ChatGPT and said, make me something that is delicious. And I followed the instructions. It was actually pretty good.
Wow.
It's a different take on the classic. Take a picture of the contents of your fridge and ask it to give you a recipe based on those contents.
So did it see like the names of the items so it could tell you in the photo?
Yes. It was able to read. I'm assuming it read the Chinese on it, and even the English, and it'll tell you, all right, so here's what you do.
Was that Gemini?
That was ChatGPT 4.
That's ChatGPT. Okay.
The other thing, the other thing that is also worth mentioning is ChatGPT is a bit more amenable to uploading pictures and different documents like PDFs, whereas Gemini is not quite there yet.
It's just text. Is it with Gemini? Not the multimodal.
And then no, Gemini does take. It is multimodal, but I could not actually. There's no app yet for Gemini that I could just take a picture on my phone and then upload it. But ChatGPT has that.
Fair enough. Hang on, we better get back to the answer to the question. So Raymond said context, and Sarah said context windows. So, Raymond was in first, but he didn't quite say the full thing.
Looks like Sarah got it.
Shall we give it to Sarah? All right. So Sarah, I'm sure you've mailed me before, but just send me your email address in a meetup message or an email so I remember to send you through the license. All right. Well, actually, we've gone quite long because it's quite a fun topic and this has been all very good, but I think we'd better tie it up there. So thank you again, Phil, for coming on, and look forward to having you back in the studio again in the future as well.
Thanks, guys. It was a pleasure.
Thanks. All right, so we'll end the stream now. Phil, if you want to stick around as well, we can chat. Cool. All right, ending now. Goodbye, everyone.
See you later. Thank you for coming.
Thanks, guys.